Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sports Hub. I'm Michael Wengrzyn, and joining me today on the set are Jacob Sennholz and Cole Walters. Well, guys, are you ready for spring break here next week?
Oh yeah, very ready. I can't wait for midterms to be finished, so I'm stoked for spring break.
Yeah, it's been a pretty tough week, honestly. Learned a lot of studying, and I'm ready for it to be over. So
Yeah.
I'm taking a nice vacation this next week, so I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, hopefully the weather's nicer where you're at than where it is right now here.
I believe it will be.
Yeah.
Well, on this episode, we'll be talking about Pointer Sports, the Big Ten Tournament, NFL free agency, the NHL, and our buy or sell segment. The number one ranked Pointers men's hockey team will host the third ranked St. Norbert College in the NCAA quarterfinals this Saturday for a spot in the Frozen Four. The matchup between the Green Knights and the Pointers will feature two of the top scoring offenses in the country. The Green Knights have the fourth ranked offense in the nation, averaging 4.37 goals per game. The Pointers, on the other hand, have the fifth best scoring offense, which is averaging 4.25 goals per game. Both teams also have defenses that rank in the top five, with the Pointers ranking second and the Green Knights ranking fourth. Saturday's matchup will be the 81st matchup between the two teams, with St. Norbert leading the series with a 49-23-8 record. In a matchup earlier this season in De Pere, the Pointers and Green Knights ended up tied at 1. So guys, there's a big game coming up to go to the Frozen Four. Who has the advantage in this game going into Saturday night?
Well, honestly, at this point of the season, Michael, I don't know if either team has the advantage. I mean, you just said it. They battled to a 1-1 tie earlier this season. Of course, we know the Pointers undefeated on the season, but they did have two ties over the course of the season, one of them being to Norbert's, the other one being way early in the season to Rhine University, if I remember correctly. But this team was just taken to an overtime, I believe a 4-3 win, or it might have been a 5-4 win over Augsburg. So they're coming off a big win. They're going to have a lot of energy, and they're defending national champions. So, and Point, always a great rivalry, and Point undefeated on the season. There's going to be a lot of reasons for this St. Norbert's team to come in and just play lights out. But I guess that's a good chance, a great chance for our Pointers to show what they're made of and knock off one of the top teams probably left in the tournament, and it's going to be a great opportunity for Player of the Year in the WIAC, Connor Rickman, to really show what he's made of. I mean, we've seen a lot of good things out of him so far this season, but as you mentioned, I think they're the fourth ranked offense in the entire nation, so expect Rickman to have to play very well this Saturday.
Cole, your thoughts on the team?
If I'm not mistaken, the game's in Seamus Point on Saturday, right?
Yep.
The Pointers have a lot of pressure coming in. The number one ranked team in the nation, St. Norbert coming off, like you mentioned, a big overtime victory in their first round. To St. Norbert, they have no pressure on them. They're like, hey, let's go win there. We got no pressure. The Pointers are at home in front of their home crowd as a top ranked team with high expectations. St. Norbert can kind of relax a bit. Well, I shouldn't say relax a bit, but as I mentioned, they have no pressure. I still fully expect the Pointers to pull off the win, but as Jake mentioned, it's going to be a very close game as it was in De Pere. I expect it to be a very close game with the Pointers probably winning by a goal, I'd say.
A goal, that would be a good guess. Possibly maybe two with maybe an empty netter or something in the late game, but I think it's going to be a close game as well.
Yeah.
The crowd going to be crazy as well. If you would have drawn Augsburg as an opponent, that's almost closer to a 3.5-hour trip. Green Bay less than 2 hours away, so definitely expect a lot of Norbert's fans to be in the building.
Yeah, definitely going to be some of that home ice advantage right there for the Pointers, and who knows, we could possibly see the Frozen Four maybe here in the backyard of our good old little small town of Stevens Point. The Pointers are definitely going to be looking for the victory out on here and potentially moving towards another national championship.
Yes, sir.
The game starts at 7 p.m. on Saturday night. Moving on to the ball diamond now, the Pointers men's baseball team got their season underway earlier today in Florida against Amherst College, losing 6-5. The Pointers took an early 2-0 lead in the top of the third inning after a throwing error by the Mammoths. The Pointers and Mammoths then each got a run in the fourth inning, making it 3-1 Pointers. The Mammoths then tied it up at 3 in the bottom of the seventh inning. The Pointers then scored 2 in the top of the ninth to take a 5-3 lead heading into the bottom of the ninth. The Mammoths, however, scored 3 runs in the ninth to get the win over the Pointers. So, guys, what are your expectations about this Pointers ball club?
They lost a lot of seniors last year. Last year they had a pretty decent team, but kind of fell apart at the end of the year. Missed the NCAA tournament as well. Got upset in the WIAC tournament. Super young team this year. I guess if they can compete with like Whitewater, lacrosse as well. Oshkosh, yes. I mean that'll help build them up. Kind of basically just improve day by day. I mean, as I mentioned, they're a young team. We'll see how the young team progresses each and every day.
Well, and I believe we're going to know a lot more after this Florida trip as well. And when we come back from spring break, this team's going to have a handful of games on an actual ball diamond, on actual grass and actual dirt under their belt. So we're going to get a little bit better of a feel as to what this team's going to be able to accomplish. And as for them being in Florida, well, man, they're lucky because they're going to come back home to some wet, soggy fields, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, we'll mention their Florida trip here later on in the show, maybe in our buy or sell segment. But yeah, a lot of big things looking forward to this year for this program. They finished third in the conference last year, and they're projected to finish, I believe, fourth in the conference this year.
Okay.
But I think they can make a huge statement as they did last year by leading the conference for most of the season. So big things possibly to come out of this Pointers Ball Club this year.
Definitely a lot of potential for sure.
The Pointers will be back in action on Friday against Washington and Jefferson College in a doubleheader. After a quick commercial break, we'll be back with the Big Ten tournament and the big news in the NFL free agency. Welcome back. The Big Ten Conference Tournament tipped off last night as the 13th-seeded Nebraska Cornhuskers took on the 12th-seeded Rutgers Scarlet Knights in the opening game, and the 14th-seeded Northwestern Wildcats took on the 11th-seeded Illinois Fighting Illini in the second game of the night. In a conference that seems to be wide open every year, this year's tournament seems to be no different, as the top four seeds in order are Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Looking at the Big Ten tournament, do you think Wisconsin can win the conference tournament this year?
I'm going to step in here, Jake.
That's fine.
Being a big Badger fan here.
That's fine.
I feel like this is your part, Cole.
So I think they make the Big Ten tournament championship, but I think they'll probably lose to I think Michigan State I'm thinking Michigan State. I think Michigan State takes it. You can never count out Tom Izzo in that conference tournament, even in March, honestly. Tom Izzo just knows what to do with that team every March. Even Michigan too. John Beilein, one of the best coaches in the conference, maybe in college basketball, honestly. I do believe Wisconsin can get to the Big Ten championship, but their inconsistency on offense and their shooting droughts might cost them a Big Ten tournament championship.
Especially those free throws too that they take.
Yeah, the free throw shooting's rough.
Well, look. Wisconsin only has to win 2 games, and they're in the championship game because they received the number 4 seed, which gave them a bye into the quarterfinals. However, last night on SportsBeat, we were looking at the breakdown of the bracket, and if they were to win their first game, which we assume that they will, they will draw Michigan State in the semifinals.
That's right.
So if they do lose to Michigan State, it'll be in the semifinals. If they beat Michigan State, then I'm all in for the Badgers winning the Big Ten tournament, but you draw Michigan State in that semifinal round. That's a tough matchup. That's a team that's potentially number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament this year. So
yeah, and Wisconsin is the number 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. But you look at the top 3 seeds: Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan. The Badgers beat Michigan in a huge game in the Kohl Center in February, and then they played really great against Purdue and Michigan State, but they fell apart there towards the end of the game and ultimately let the victory slip out of their hands. But if they face one of those 3 teams, I could potentially see them, playing lights out, and they'll have a chance to win. They're always going to be competitive, no matter what kind of season they're having, especially compared to the season that they had last year. They actually came pretty close to beating Michigan State. So who knows? Yeah,
I definitely agree. I just think Michigan State's probably the toughest matchup out of those 3 teams. So if they are able to get past Michigan State, that's why I said I believe they could then win the championship, because they'll be going against either Michigan or Purdue, you would assume. So,
well, the Big Ten tournament keeps going. Is there potentially any or which team do you think that could possibly come out on top there with the Big Ten tournament championship?
If not Wisconsin, I'd say Michigan. I mentioned Beeline's got a good veteran team out there. I mean, Brazdeikis is, I think, a freshman or sophomore. I want to say he's kind of their go-to guy. If I had to pick anyone, I'd say Michigan probably takes it.
Michigan, yeah. For me, it's been Michigan, Michigan State all year long. So either one of those. Again, I'm hoping, or I'm thinking it possibly would be Michigan, more so than Michigan State, because you want the Badgers to get that victory. But either one of those teams. But if I had to guess, the Big Ten tournament champion is coming from the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Michigan State as well. I think we're going to see some great basketball here being played as we move closer to the NCAA tournament. But now let's switch over to the most exciting news in the NFL. Even though the NFL free agency period did not officially start until 3 p.m. yesterday, many big-time deals were made verbally during the NFL's legal tampering period. Among a long list of recognizable and highly sought-after free agents, there were a few names that made the biggest headlines. We saw Le'Veon Bell finally find a home as a New York Jet after nearly two-year saga breakup with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles will be the starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Antonio Brown guaranteed himself $30 million by becoming an Oakland Raider, and Landon Collins became the highest-paid safety of all time, courtesy of the Washington Redskins. Despite the wild free agency action we've seen in recent days, it will be hard to argue that the one thing that stood out this week was in fact a trade. News broke out at about 5 p.m. Tuesday night that arguably the best wide receiver in the league, Odell Beckham Jr., had been traded to the Cleveland Browns. In return, the Giants received Cleveland's first-round pick this season, a third-round pick, and safety Jabril Peppers. The trade reunites OBJ with his college teammate and roommate Jarvis Landry and gives Cleveland one of the top receiving corps in the NFL. So guys, big news, ton of money being tossed around this year. Were there any contracts that really surprised you, even though the free agency period is officially now underway?
You know, I don't know why I'm surprised, because we see it every year in every sport. The money just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But what NFL players have been arguing for and wanting for a long time now is guaranteed money, and we're finally starting to see that. We saw it a little bit last year and the year before, but we're seeing it a ton this year. A guy like Landon Collins insuring himself over $50 million guaranteed, $84 million if he plays that contract all the way out. A guy like C.J. Mosley is being paid upwards of $50 million, and you can just keep on going down the list. And I mean, these are guys who are proven, but they're not necessarily the top superstars of the league. Landon Collins is probably the best player at his position, but even so, even a few years ago, you would have never thought ever you would see a defensive player of like any position, but especially a safety, getting paid upwards of $100 million. I mean, that was quarterback money and big-time quarterback money just a few years ago. So honestly, a lot of these numbers are surprising me, but that's a trend that's going to continue.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Jake hit it on the button. I'd like to see how Landon Collins does in Washington. As you mentioned, he got quarterback money. Can Landon Collins make that difference on the Redskins' defense to maybe propel them to a potential playoff contention, in the NFC East? Also, Antonio Brown, his contract with the Oakland Raiders. How is he going to do it in Oakland? I know John Gruden can work. I wouldn't say work with. Actually, I could say work with him. But like, can Derek Carr and Antonio Brown work well together where the Oakland Raiders can be successful? I know Oakland's got a lot of draft picks coming up too, so Oakland's definitely on the rise, it seems like, and I think Brown is going into a system that's on the rise. And then mention Nick Foles a little bit. We'll see how he does in Jacksonville. Jacksonville cut ties with Blake Bortles. Almost led him to the Super Bowl. It was sad for me. I'm a Blake Bortles fan. But we'll see how Nick Foles does in Jacksonville.
And I think it's a fantastic move for Jacksonville. Yeah. Obviously, finally moving on from Blake Bortles. But the other thing is, a lot of people were thinking and believing that the Jaguars were going to go after Nick Foles last year after he initially was coming off the Super Bowl MVP.
Yep.
And if that was the case, they would have had to give up probably a rather high pick, maybe even 2 picks, some other compensation. Instead, they wait a year. Foles walks away clean from Philadelphia, and all it costs them is a straight-up money contract. So that's a massive win in my book for the Jaguars.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned Foles, we mentioned Brown, we mentioned Collins, but we also have to mention, too, Le'Veon Bell finally finding a home now after sitting out the entire 2008 season despite wanting more money. Finally signed a deal where he gets a little bit more of that payday he's looking for, but yet could have had some more if he stuck with the Steelers potentially having $70 million instead of $52 million.
Yeah, he gives up 18 overall, 18 in contract total, but he also gives up over 14 from sitting out last year. So you add those numbers together, and Le'Veon Bell sitting out 1 year and choosing to switch teams cost him nearly $30 million, which is over half of the contract that he ended up signing. So if you look at it, I don't really think he ended up winning in the type of fashion that he was wanting to. But hey, he finally signed with somebody and he's getting paid now. So
Agreed.
Good for him.
Very true.
I'm sorry, Michael. I was going to chime in a little bit. It just kind of blows my mind how Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown left the Steelers, where they had a good quarterback, had a good coaching staff. Pittsburgh's got a good team out there. I was kind of surprised to see them leave, but we'll see how they do with their new teams, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting NFL season for sure. But let's address the elephant here in the room. Going back now to OBJ, do you believe that this move makes the Browns the favorites now in the AFC North and potentially maybe even the AFC?
Oh, I don't know if I can go overall in the entire AFC.
Right.
You've still got the Patriots. You've still got Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, these Browns have a lot to prove before we put them in that category. However, yes, for sure, I do believe this makes them the favorite in the AFC North. You've got an ailing Bengals team who's not been good for a very long time, a Pittsburgh Steelers team with a lot of question marks as well. And then the other team in the division is blanking my mind for some reason. Baltimore Ravens, thank you, yeah. And Ravens obviously a solid team every year, and they just signed Mark Ingram, so they're going to have a dual threat with
Earl
Lamar
Thomas
Jackson,
as well.
Earl Thomas. So I think it'll be between the Ravens and the Browns for that top spot in the AFC North.
Yeah, I can agree with Jake. They'll be competing with the Ravens for that top spot. John Harbaugh does wonders with the Ravens, even with minimal talent too. He can build them into a playoff contender. So yeah, they'll definitely be competing with the Ravens, but the Browns are a playoff contender now.
They won 7 games last year. I mean, there's no reason.
More games than the Packers.
Right. There's no reason to think they
Never
can't
thought
win.
we'd be saying that.
Right. Never. But yeah, there's no reason to think they can't win at least 10 games next year. I wouldn't think.
Real quick, we do have to give some big credit out to the general manager, John Dorsey, former Packers director of college scouting, and of course, assistant GM, Elliot Wolf. Again, another big-time Packers connection that is continuing to build off something huge here in Cleveland. And we're going to see some great stuff out of Cleveland this year. I can't wait. Definitely.
Yeah, if you look at Dorsey's track records of trades and drafts going all the way back to Packers and the Chiefs as well, it's simply incredible, the players that he's scouted and brought in.
Yeah.
After our final commercial break, we'll be back with the NHL and our buy or sell segment.
I just wanted to get good grades and to do well. But it also made me realize that I have a lot of career goals.
You're there to get a full college experience, not only participate in your sport, but participate in things outside of that. And it's all about growing as a person.
My coaches have helped me with figuring out who I really am. Their lives are dedicated for us to succeed.
Being a part of the different activities and organizations that I've been a part of, I'm actually able to see myself where I'm like, hey, I actually can make a change. I'm one person that can make a difference.
Division III has helped me to develop teamwork skills, critical thinking skills, time management skills.
It's not just about basketball, or it's not just about school. It's about developing yourself as a person altogether.
Welcome back. The NHL is nearing the end of its regular season as it has reached 70 games in the 82-game season. In the Eastern Conference, the league-leading Tampa Bay Lightning have already clinched the playoff spot with 110 points so far, and in the Western Conference, the San Jose Sharks lead the conference with 94 points on the season. Other notable teams in the playoff race include the defending champion Washington Capitals, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Toronto Maple Leafs. With teams fighting to clinch a spot here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which teams from either conference do you think could get into the Stanley Cup playoffs and potentially make a run at the Stanley Cup playoffs or Stanley Cup final in June?
Well, the obvious answer here is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've been the best team in the NHL since the get-go. They're blowing out every other team in the league as far as points. I mean, you heard it. The Sharks leading the other conference, they only have 94 points. Tampa Bay has 110. I mean, that's a pretty big discrepancy between
and there's still 12 games to go yet.
Still 12 games to go. And I said it even during the preseason, if this is the Lightning's year, and their window is running short, they've been making moves, their good players are getting older, and they've just fallen short. these last bunch of years, probably 5 or 6 years, they've had the team, they've had the potential, they haven't been able to do it. I think this is their year to get there, but besides for them, I'm always cheering for my Penguins. I don't think the Penguins are as good of a squad as they have been in recent years.
I believe they're in 6th right now in the Eastern Conference.
Right, so they're going to get to a lower seed, but I mean, Sidney Crosby and Malkin, you go down the list.
Chris Letang.
Yeah, Letang, those are not guys that you want to see in the playoffs, just plain and simple.
Matt Murray.
Matt Murray, yeah. I mean, the list just goes on, and obviously the Capitals. But honestly, for me, I think my team this year is going to be the Sharks. It's a common thing to say here. It's a common thing to say here at Stevens Point. Captain Joe Pavelski, obviously born and raised here in Point. He had a heck of a game winner the other night against the Jets. It was insane. And I'm finally doing it this year. I'm jumping on the Sharks bandwagon.
All right.
Yeah, I could see the Tampa Bay Lightning making a run of the Stanley Cup final after year near misses. I think this year might be their year. I mean, I was going to touch on the Sharks too, which Jay kind of touched on it. I think the Sharks are going to get back to the Stanley Cup final. I don't know. They got the veteran squad to do it. To get to the Stanley Cup final. You can never count out the Penguins either.
Nope.
I mean, they're also a good veteran team who seem to find their way either in the conference finals or even or in the Stanley Cup final as well. It's kind of wide open in the NHL right now, but I'd like to see what happens in the playoffs.
The Sharks are a team with 2 hot goaltenders right now too, and that's not something that you see very often. And we saw it with Murray and Fleury a few years ago, which resulted in Fleury being the first pick overall in the expansion draft when he went to Las Vegas. But we see it with Jones and his backup this year as well. And they say all it takes in the playoffs is you can ride a hot goalie. Well, if you got 2 hot goalies, that makes it even better. So
yeah, obviously a huge discrepancy between how the Eastern Conference has been competitive this year and how much weaker the Western Conference has been. But I think if you look at the beginning of the season, the San Jose Sharks, I think, were considered one of the favorites to potentially go back to the Stanley Cup after they got William Karlsson. That was a huge pickup, and then they got
big trade.
Nyquist or whatever his I forget exactly who they got, but they picked him up, and since then they've just been rolling along. So look out for the Sharks, and they got to keep moving, otherwise they're gonna falter there, as what normal Sharks do. The Stanley Cup playoffs start on April 10th, as 16 teams will look for the chance to hoist the Stanley Cup in June. Now to wrap up the show, guys, we'll do some buy or sell. First one, the Pointers men's baseball team will have a record above 500 after their spring break trip.
Well, I'll buy that. I don't know what to say about that. So,
I think they lost their first 3 or 4 games, didn't they? So they have to. Or was that the softball team?
That was the softball team that lost
the
their first 4.
So I was gonna say when you start 0-4, it's a little hard to climb back. They'd have to win every game. But no, okay. If that's not the case, then I will buy that as well. I think that they're gonna find a rhythm here down in Florida, and then hopefully be able to sustain it when they come back home.
I'll buy it as well. They're going to be playing some tough teams down there, but at the same time, I have a feeling that they'll come back ready to go, even though the weather might be a whole different story about it. Next one, at least 2 13 seeds or lower will win in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, that is a good question. I'm gonna sell that. It's tough, but you think the 4 seed, whoever that is, I think their veteran leadership can push past a 13 seed. Plus, they played a tougher schedule too. I'm gonna have to sell that.
I'll buy it just to be different and just because it's March and it would be exciting. Right. I think, it's common to see an 11, a 12, a 13 seed win usually in the first round. And I don't think there's going to be any 16s upsetting 1s this year. I don't think that's going to happen again for a long time. But I could see a 15 seed winning because that's not uncommon. So. Yeah,
we saw a lot of huge upsets last year in the tournament, and I'll buy that too. I think we're in for some good stuff again this year as the tournament looks. As the tournament will be in, the Final Four will be in Minneapolis this year, so the Badgers wouldn't have to go far if they go all the way to the Final Four either.
No, this would definitely be a great year to do it for them. They would have incredible support.
The Packers will finish in the top 10 for defense next season.
Sure, I'll buy that. I think they'd be at the bottom of those 10, but I think Mike Pettin is going to do something different with this defense this year. I think it's built more in his image now. They might draft another good player or two that they're going to be able to plug and play right away. And they just made a few great signings. So I'll say, yeah, they'll be in the top 10.
I can buy that as well. Yeah, the signings are huge for them. Yeah, Pattin's a great defensive coordinator. He can definitely adjust with the players he just received. And plus the draft's coming up too, so I'll definitely buy that.
I'll be a little different. I'll sell it. I don't think they'll be in the top 10, but I think they'll be right outside the top 10, probably around 12th or 13th. I do think, though, this defense is making improvements, and this season is definitely going to be make it or break it for Mike Pettin as well. Last one, the San Jose Sharks will be in the Stanley Cup Finals this season.
Well, you already know this one. I'm buying it.
I'm buying it too.
3 buys, easy enough for all of us. Well, that's all the time we have for the show today. I'd like to thank Jacob and Cole for joining me today, and a big thank you to our technical staff and all their hard work to make this show possible. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at SBTV UWSP Television, or follow us on Twitter at SBTV_UWSP. Also visit the UWSP homepage to locate all your Pointer athletic information. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you after spring break for the next episode of the Sports Hub.